I'm very pleased to welcome back to our program the man that I consider the best president of my lifetime, Nobel Peace Prize winner, one of our world's genuinely great statesmen, former President Jimmy Carter. He has a new book out called A Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power. President Carter, welcome back to the program.
Tom, it's good to be on with you and our folks all over the country.
Thank you so much. Before we get to your book, which I have read most of, and I think it's absolutely brilliant, I have an unrelated question about American politics.
Okay.
Do you mind if I ask that, or would you prefer
I don't mind.
It's okay?
Yeah.
In about three or 4 years ago, the LBJ Library released tapes of LBJ working with Everett Dirksen trying to stop the Nixon campaign in '68 from blocking LBJ's peace deal with South Vietnam. They were not successful, and Dirksen called what Nixon did treason, and those tapes are now available. President Bonnie Sauter has said that something similar happened to you during the Reagan campaign, and George W. Bush was only president because of the intervention of the U.S. Supreme Court, something you've commented on in the past. I'm wondering, have we had a legitimately elected Republican president since Dwight Eisenhower?
Well, I think so. I wouldn't want to comment on that. That's pretty gross. But yeah, I think we've had a legitimate elected president. I don't think that George W. Bush won the election in 2000 against Al Gore because I think he probably lost Florida and also that nationwide. But, when the Supreme Court rules in our country, that's what we have to accept.
Yeah, absolutely. In your book, your book is so extraordinary, and I just want to strongly encourage all of our listeners to pick this up. It's a short, easy read, and it's so solid. A call to action. Early on in the book, in page 35, you talk about how America has dropped the ball, how incarceration, for example. You said when I was president. You're talking about now, there are now 5 times as many American inmates in federal, state, and local prisons as when I was president. The number of incarcerated black women has increased by 800%.
That's correct. Yes, in fact, when compared when I was governor, there's 7.5 times as many people in prison now. We've gotten to be a punitive society rather than a rehabilitative society, and we also have the only death penalty, as you know, in this hemisphere or in NATO. And those things, I believe, are excessively violent, and they don't depend on making people better if they do make a mistake in the law. And there are about 3,200 people in this country now who are in jail for a life sentence that have never committed any crime of violence. They're there for drugs and so forth. So this is what we are doing in our country, and I think it sets a bad example for demonstrating violence in other aspects of our life.
As a Christian, you quoted a conversation you had with, I believe it was an Orthodox Christian, or was it the Vatican? I'm sorry, I read it. I don't have it right in front of me.
Right.
Where they talked about how man was created first, but then with the in the Christian context, men and women are created equal, basically through baptism.
Yes.
And that you see that as a really good sign in that realm. Could you speak to that, and also to the later story that you told about how the King of Morocco came back to the White House and spoke with your mother, and how he's opening up Morocco to women? You mentioned Saudi Arabia, some of these countries that we think of as very restrictive, and in many ways they are, how the Muslim world is changing as well.
Well, I think the Muslim world is not to be condemned because, as I mentioned, a whole lot of, maybe about 20 countries in the Islamic world that have very honest and fair elections. In fact, the largest Islamic country in the world is Indonesia, where we've had 2 elections that the Carter Center monitored. And in Morocco, the young king who came to visit me at the White House when I was president, he was just a boy then, has made the most profound changes or reforms in their laws in Morocco than any other country in the Islamic world as far as guaranteeing women equal rights. And this is a very encouraging thing. But I wouldn't say that the Quran has any worse verses in it about women's rights than does the Holy Bible. In fact, it's hard to find a verse in the Quran that really says that men are superior to women. Almost invariably, the verses say that they're both created equal in God's eyes. But in the Christian church, of course, and in the Old Testament, you can find some selected verses that say the opposite thing. But I teach the Bible every Sunday in my little home church in Plains, and I know that Jesus Christ was a preeminent champion of women's rights in his lifetime, and maybe the champion of all times. So when I get into a quandary about a particular verse in the Bible, there are about 36,000 of them, I just go back and read what Jesus did and said, and it reassures me about women's rights.
I'm curious your thoughts on population. I didn't see much discussion of it in the book, although, as I mentioned, I've only read about three-quarters of it. I wrote a book back in '96, Last Stars of Ancient Sunlight, citing a bunch of research that showed that if you want to stabilize population, it's not even a matter of access to birth control. It's a matter of political and economic power for women, that when women are empowered, they will control family size.
That's exactly right. If you educate girls and women and give them an equal chance in the society, then almost immediately the number of children that they bear drops down. There's a direct relationship between economic progress, and particularly with women, and the small size of families. And we found that we have had programs in about 80 countries around the world, and we found that in every place we've had a major health program.
That as women have power and control over themselves, that their family sizes decrease.
Yeah, and when they know the children are going to live, you know, when they give the children better sanitation, when they give them better diet and so forth, and give them a rudimentary opportunity for better health care, if they realize that their children are going to live, then they don't have as many children as they can. Another thing that happens is that when you convince a community that the girls can get educated and be just as productive when you're an old parent as your son can, maybe even more attentive to her parents, then of course you stop the genocide or gendercide, I call it, of little girls when they're born.
Yeah. It's very easy for us to look at third world nations or other countries and religions and wag our finger at them. But one of the points that you make in the book, and so very eloquently, you talk about not just the Equal Rights Amendment, but the Violence Against Women Act, and then immediately in the next paragraph, how there were a number of prominent politicians and people like Phyllis Schlafly who condemned it. What is your prognosis for women's rights here in the United States? We still have not passed the Equal Rights Amendment.
It's horrendous. We rank 78th in the world in equal pay for women. 77 other countries are above us. We rank 70th in the number of women who hold public office at the local, state, and national level. We have one of the worst sexual trafficking or slavery programs in America, particularly for young girls. The State Department last year estimated that there were 100,000 girls sold into slavery in America every year. Atlanta is the number one trading post for young girls being sold into slavery because we have the largest airport in the world, and we import a lot of our passengers from the southern hemisphere, where girls that a pimp wants to buy or a brothel owner wants to buy are much more cheap than the girls in the northern hemisphere. So we have all of these kinds of abuses, not only in what I've just mentioned, but also in the military and in almost every university in America. We have sexual abuse that's not really punished or even brought to the public's attention.
So there seems in the United States, and presumably all around the world, a number of different leverage points, economic, political, educational, religious. Where are the areas to bring about equal rights for girls and women and empowerment of girls and women that you think are the most powerful and effective, as our last question here?
Well, one thing is for the United States Congress to ratify or approve the laws that have been passed by the United Nations General Assembly and also by the Security Council. There's a convention on the elimination of discrimination against women, CEDAW they call it, that most other countries have ratified, including China and so forth, but the U.S. Senate refuses to ratify this convention. And there's an International Violence Against Women Act that had been passed by most countries. There again, the United States Congress refuses to pass it. And so these are the things that block our country from taking a leadership role in the whole world and trying to reduce the abuse of women and girls.
Okay. President Jimmy Carter, his new book, A Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power. Sir, you are genuinely one of my heroes. Thank you so much for being with us.
Enjoyed being with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.